15 years it's been since the original How to Train Your Dragon came out, since my parents told me we were going to watch the Dragon movie because I was a kid, so that's what I called it, meaning that is 15 years of watching, adoring, loving, living, growing up with that movie and the sequels, TV shows, even the games that came after it. To say that this franchise is my childhood would be a massive understatement, because rather than just my childhood, it's a part of my life, because it's not like I suddenly grew up and just discarded the story because I was older now. I hit a certain age, so now I've grown out of such things. No, that's not how it works. I always go back and rewatch each of the movies, each of the TV shows. I still play the mobile game to this day. I made a video when the first teaser trailer was released going over my love for the story and my hopes for this movie, and now the movie is out. Although before talking about it, there is the standard stuff to talk about first that comes along with every live action adaptation of a beloved animated film, and I'll also give my view on each of those points of discussion. So first, what's the point in these movies? Well, the same as the rest, money. So the board, the executives can cash themselves a fat paycheck when these movies inevitably make a ton of money because they are guaranteed to make a ton of it from IP recognition alone. I agree with that 100%, but I don't like to dwell on it because at the same time, beneath those greedy higher-ups are actual people trying their best to make this movie a genuine success, be it writers, costume designers, cameramen, stunt performers, VFX artists, and so on. People's frustrations surrounding the existence of such movies, live action adaptations, is justified, but at the same time, with these people who are the actual ones working on the movie, I have no doubt they will be trying their best. You know, they're not gonna actively try to make a bad movie. So while I do understand people who won't watch these movies so they can stick it to those greedy higher-ups, I will watch it for, on top of my feelings for the franchise, for the sake of all the effort from the actual people who worked on this movie. And the second point, the original will always be the superior version, and again I do agree. There's nothing this movie could do to make me prefer it over the animated, and obviously as the years have gone on, the reputation of live action adaptations has gotten worse, and every once in a while one comes around that is actually a big success, although it still is rare. So to take things all the way back, strip things right back down to the bare bone, from my point of view, I think the original purpose of live action adaptations was to achieve this sense of wonder, in the sense that they would invoke the feeling that you can reach out and touch it, bring larger than life worlds and stories to life, you know. But the problem with that is, of course, the way it alienates animation as a medium of storytelling. This trend in Hollywood where animation is like the ugly duckling. Oh, it's animated, it's a kid's movie. An animated movie could never be best movie of the year. The way that there is an Oscar specifically for best animated picture, which pretty much completely separates it from the real best picture award, as if animation doesn't deserve the same recognition because it is animated, when in reality animation offers the most creativity, the widest spectrum for adventure, for wonder, for all kinds of storytelling. So that brings us to the director, Dean DeBlois. He went on record saying he wouldn't make a live action, yet he did direct this, and if I remember correctly, that is because when DreamWorks announced that they would be making a live action How to Train Your Dragon, he decided to come back for it because he didn't want someone else to butcher it, which I can definitely understand. And that is kind of my stance as well. To summarize, I will never advocate for more live action adaptations because what is the point? But I will still watch them when they do come out, for my love of the original, for the people who worked so hard on it on and off the screen, to invoke that feeling of seeing it come to life. If it's good, then that's great. If it's not, then that is a shame, but I still have the magic of the original to revisit whenever I want to. I know a lot of people will already hate the live action adaptations before they've even seen them. For me personally, I would prefer to go into each one with an open mind because I would rather not purposefully ruin my enjoyment of the movie before I've even seen it. So as you can tell, I'm much more of a glass half full kind of person than half empty. I prefer to look on the bright side, not all the time, but most of the time. I went to see the movie in the morning because why not? Opening day, let's see it as soon as possible. I don't know about the rest of the world, but in the UK at least, it came out on the 9th of June, which was Monday, so everyone was at work. I was wasn't, because I just finished my university exams and work had actually slowed down a bit for me, which was nice. And I was not going to wait 5 days until the weekend so my whole family could watch it as well. Although I still am going to watch it again with my family on Friday in 4DX. Anyway, because it was a Monday morning, no one's going to be at the cinema on a Monday morning. So I had an entire screening to myself, which was nice. So I sat down, watched the movie, and by the end, I loved it. I know, I cannot believe it either. I genuinely had such a good time. Although it's a really good time that does have a very big asterisk next to it, because this comes down to what you expect, what you want or would want from a live action adaptation, because one can either make changes for the better, make changes for the worse, or minimal changes, and this one is very nearly a shot-for-shot remake. Not quite, but almost. So you could very much say that my enjoyment of the film was because such a huge part of it was pulled straight from the original. And that does play into the idea of there being no point in these movies, as I said before, and how some people would view it being shot for shot as a big negative next to its name. Although for me, it's like, I don't really know how to word it. So much of it is taken straight from the animated movie, and I love the animated movie, so I'm going to enjoy this one as well. You know what I mean? It's the same content, and just because it is in live action format doesn't mean I'm suddenly gonna not like that content anymore, you know? For me personally, the shot for shot minimal changes route is the way to go, because any major changes that are made is almost guaranteed to be to the detriment of the story being told. So while I agree with the point of what is the point, I don't like to dwell on it. Like I said, I am glass half full, not half empty. So I was sitting in the screening mouthing the lines as they were being said, seeing the same story play out almost exactly beat for beat, but that's just it. It is the same story, so I'll have fun with it regardless of the medium. I was smiling from ear to ear throughout the whole thing unashamedly. It's not all positive though, it was never going to be. But with the story being the same story, my issues unsurprisingly therefore come from the limitations of it being live action now rather than animated. In animation, the characters can be as expressive as you want them to be, but real people, being real, don't have that same freedom without hurting themselves. Their faces physically can't stretch enough to be as exaggerated as what can be done in animation, which of course is not the fault of any of the actors, that's just what comes with the live action territory. Then there's the actual line delivery itself. I do want to make clear I thought it was still good, solid, but it felt like it was toned down in a sense, and I'm sure some lines were purposefully delivered differently to try and convey something different. So while, like I said, I do think the actors did a good job, it was always gonna feel a little off, because we were, or at least for me, I'm just so used to the original voice cast from the movies or the TV shows. For a specific example, there is Gobber, where during the dragon training he gets increasingly frustrated with Hiccup for asking too many questions. In the original, he has a little outburst, a jump where he tells Hiccup to get in there, whereas in this he kind of just points in a direction. When talking about the movie as a whole, something like this is almost completely insignificant, especially when you compare it to all the stuff that, in my opinion, the movie did right. But it is those little things that do make a big difference in their own right. And let's stick with Gobber, because he does not have an accent in this movie. Well, he has an accent in this movie, just not a Scottish one, and that caught me off guard. Honestly, whenever he did speak, it did just not feel quite right to me. There was the detail added that Berk was founded by different tribes from all across the world, so I guess that could be an in-universe explanation, although that doesn't make his voice sound any more fitting to me personally. I think I did kind of get used to it by the end, but not really. And another example of line delivery, during the test drive scene, Hiccup has his cheat sheet which he's reading from to help him, and he is still making mistakes as he reads it, and it's that nuance, that subtle awkwardness that comes from him correcting himself. From Jay Baruchel's performance,
Yeah, I'm on it. Position 4. 3.
that just can't be replicated. So while I think Mason Thames did a very good job, and it's not at all his fault, how was he supposed to improve on near perfection, you know? And talking about awkwardness, they removed Hiccup's little speech about cutting out Toothless's heart and taking it to his father. The only reason I can think that they did cut it is because it was awkward, because it didn't feel right, but that wouldn't really make sense since that's the whole point of the scene. Hiccup does not talk like that, he does not carry himself like that. The whole point is that he is trying to be something that he isn't, he is forcing it, which is why it does come across as so unnatural, because it is supposed to, you know, every time I rewatch the original animated movie, when he gives that little speech, I cringe a bit every single time, which is fine because that's just not who Hiccup is. So I was a bit disappointed by that exclusion. One example of line delivery which is actually kind of nice here is during the big falling out between Hiccup and Stoic, specifically this bit.
They've killed hundreds of us!
And we've killed thousands of them!
Where Stoic is shouting while Hiccup is the one pleading. Compare that to the live action version.
They've killed hundreds of us!
And we've killed thousands of them!
Where the roles are kind of switched. With Gerard Butler's performance here, his voice is breaking as he's talking. He's now kind of the one pleading, you know, okay, the dragons might be facing their own issues, just let me protect my people. And Hiccup is the one shouting here as if he is now at the end of his rope. I'm not saying one version is better than the other. In fact, I think they're both great in their own way. That's another thing with these adaptations. You don't have to always say one is better than the other. Like, the script for that scene is the exact same, but the subtle differences in performance is what makes them different in a good way. My last issue is another small one, but it is the dragon design, which, don't get me wrong, they do look incredible and each of them do retain their charm, their individuality, but I was thinking they kept Toothless's design near exactly the same because it is Toothless. You cannot change him in any way, shape or form, so while he still has his big expressive eyes, the other species are given much smaller, more standard beady eyes. Like, compare the Monstrous Nightmares eyes here to the animated movie. I can obviously look past it, it's not a deal breaker, and I can see how it does make Toothless seem that much more distinct. It's not really an issue, it's more of a preference thing, you know, because these dragons look so ridiculously good, and it's probably because I've seen so much more of them in the TV shows where each of them do get more fleshed out as compared to the movies where they aren't the main focus in terms of character at least. But why couldn't we have just given them bigger eyes as well? Maybe not this big, but bigger. Make theirs a bit more expressive like Toothless's. So switching over to the positives now, I spoke about it being near shot for shot before. From my point of view, that was the preferred outcome because any major changes, like I said, would have been bad. There are a few small changes I will talk about, but as for what was the same, which was the vast majority of it, each scene did just make me happy. Whether it was listening to the opening narration, everything with Hiccup and Toothless getting to know each other, you know, the dinner with a dragon stuff, the dragon training, the test drive scene in its entirety, the romantic flight, Hiccup's final test, the final battle against the Red Death. I just had such a good time. But talking more specifically now, the best performance in this movie is without a doubt and unsurprisingly Gerard Butler, who reprises his role. His voice, his energy was just so on point because he is stoic. There is no animation to live action whiplash with him because he is just stoic, and it doesn't hurt that he's obviously a great actor beyond just voice acting as well. Who would have thought? One change that I kind of noticed is that I feel like there was a bit more emphasis put on the fact that something needed to be done about the dragons. The village was suffering, so something had to be done. When Stoic gave his speech before Hiccup faced his final test, I was kind of on his side because he may have been in the wrong, yes, but you can't blame him for wanting his son to be prepared for this harsh world. I could understand him being a father wanting his son to be ready. And another thing with Stoic actually is earlier on when he was talking to Gobber about starting the dragon training and who Hiccup is meant to be, I could hear a bit of Stoic ship playing in the background, which is the soundtrack that played during, spoiler warning, I guess I don't think one is necessary, the soundtrack that played during Stoic's funeral in the sequel. So I thought that was a great touch because it was very subtle, it wasn't overwhelming, and it played when Stoic was talking about himself, how he grew up. So I thought that was a very nice addition. Another addition which I liked, and I think this is the most noticeable one, which is that from the other kid's point of view, Hiccup was just a nepo baby who had the perks of being the chief's son. He could get away with stuff no one else could, like leaving his station in the smithing forge to chase a fairy tale, getting a place in the dragon training when he was clearly unfit to be there. You can see where that perspective can come from, where it looks like he can get away with stuff because of who his father is. That's what it looks like to an outsider looking in, but we know that's not the case. You don't always have all the details, you don't know the full story, so who are you to judge? And an extension to this is Snotlout's relationship with his father, which isn't explored until the TV shows. He himself doesn't have a good relationship with his father, so of course he would think the chief's son would have it easy. So I did appreciate that as well. Next is Astrid, where the small additions given to her I feel like make her feel more believable. For example, she lashes out at everyone during the training because the other kids are complete idiots as well. So it would stand to reason that she is angry at all of them rather than just Hiccup, even if he is still the focus of her anger because he kind of just doesn't fit in at all. I like how they added an extended talk between them after Gobba told them to read the Book of Dragons because it gave the character of Astrid insight into Hiccup's life. She wasn't just an outsider looking in, she learned a bit about his mentality, his relationship with his father while keeping her and Hiccup distant. She also had more to say after the romantic flight scene. I mentioned it before, but she talks about how Toothless doesn't change the situation. The village is still being terrorized by the dragons. Just because you made friends with one doesn't change that fact. It was a rational response after what she'd learned about their bond. I think Astrid was good in this movie, and I think Nico Parker did a good job as well. So I kind of talked about him before, but Mason Thames as Hiccup was overall very good. He looked the part, and I mean that as an actual point. He looked scrawny and out of his depth, and as for his performance, I wasn't convinced by the trailers, but I think he did a solid job. He has kind of been put at a massive disadvantage because with the whole shot for shot thing, that applied the most of course with his own scenes, because as the main character he'd have the most scenes, the most important scenes, so most of his stuff was the stuff pulled straight from the original, meaning his performance would be much more heavily scrutinized, not only because he's playing the main character but because of how easily it could be compared to the animated movie. And of course, while I do stand by the fact I still and always will prefer the original with Jay Baruchel's voice, I commend Mason Thames here for a job well done. Then there's the soundtrack, which needs no discussion at all. It's amazing, one of the best soundtracks ever, and that still rings true with this adaptation as well. It's just such an unbelievably good score. I don't think any more needs to be said. And back to what I said at the start about live action movies being about the spectacle and bringing it to life. The visuals in this movie are absolutely unreal. I talked about the dragons a bit before, except for the small issue about the eyes. Everything else about them looks so good. The detail in the models, knowing how expensive movies are these days and how some need to take shortcuts. For example, in the recent Lilo and Stitch live action, Jumba and Pleakley were in their human forms for the vast majority of the movie. The fact that we see so much of the dragons and they all look as good as they do is a testament to every single person who worked and played a role in bringing them to the big screen. Toothless as well looks like Toothless, which is a huge credit to their work as well. You can only imagine the outrage that would have been had they messed up his design. The landscapes and environments are stunning. All of the on-location shooting did wonders for this movie. Maybe that helped save some budget for the dragons. I don't know if that's how it works in filmmaking, but it sounds about right. The romantic flight scene really was something else as well. I was afraid it would look like a harsh green screen, but it looked magical. The clouds and the night sky, the aurora across the sky. And another thing that helped the visuals was the size of the movie. I could really feel the scale of everything. I noticed it straight away when Stoic fought against the monstrous nightmare, soon to be Hook Fang. At the start of the movie, every hit felt like it had force behind it. There was weight behind every punch, and again when Toothless saved Hiccup in the arena, the low angle camera did really well in making the two dragons feel that much bigger. And I can't go without mentioning the Red Death at the very end if you want to talk about weight and scale. First off, just like the rest of the VFX, this thing looked so much better than it had any right to be. And the sheer size of it, I couldn't tell if it was because it was in live action now, but it felt at least twice as big as it was in the original original movie, it looked and felt huge. This was a real kaiju. Big fan of the additional scene of Astrid hacking at its teeth as well. And back to the test drive scene for the sensation of flying. The surround sound of the screening made it feel like a ride, but it's also a scene for me where the shaky camera is acceptable because we are twisting and turning, zipping and zooming through all these tight corners and sharp rocks. The whole point of the scene is to feel like you're flying with them. And for the test drive scene just in general, like the animated one as well, it will never ever get old, nor will the rest of the franchise as well, to be fair. So to summarize, it's near shot for shot, which I think is definitely for the best. Any major changes would have been for the worse. While the performances will never replace the original, I think they did a good job for the most part in embodying their characters. The small changes that were made, I think, did complement the story well. The visuals and spectacle was really amazing, and it did succeed in invoking that feeling of being able to reach out and touch it. And my main issues come from the limitations that the medium of live action brings as a medium of storytelling compared to animation, rather than from the story, which should not be a surprise given how closely it follows the original story. So no surprise, I still will always prefer the original as well, but this movie on its own is still so really good, and I would happily rewatch it as well. An adaptation for the second movie has already been confirmed, and at the moment it's set to release in June 2027, and if this adaptation is anything to go by, I am very much looking forward to that one as well. I came into it just not wanting to be disappointed, but I got more than that, and this has just made me so very happy.